Hello, everybody, and welcome to All Hands on Tech Live. We're back. We're streaming again, doing my live stream again, so I haven't done one of these in a couple weeks. We did a bunch of live streams from reInvent that were awesome, that were a lot of fun, and then I took some time off because I got sick. But I'm back, and today we're going to do something a little bit different. So in the last couple months, we've been working a lot on this portal app, and we're going to jump back into that. But today I just kind of wanted to go over Blazor components and just kind of teach some of the basics of Blazor components. I think they're really awesome. I think they're really cool, and I think this is going to be kind of a fun thing for people to jump into and start using if you're using Blazor. So let's just get right into it here. There's my screen. All right. So as I'm going along with this, if you have any questions or anything, feel free to pop it into the chat. I'm going to do a quick tech check here, make sure we are where we're supposed to be. And hello, I see a message here from YouTube, so we must be streaming on YouTube. Hi there, RF. Thank you for joining. And I'll check here really quick. Let's see, we're on YouTube. Make sure LinkedIn is working, Twitch is working. Very cool. All right, Facebook. All right, so tech check is complete. It's like we are here. Howdy from Korea. Hello, thank you for joining. That's one of the coolest things I think about streaming is to be able to meet all you folks from all around the world, and not just people like in the local Portland area where I live. So this is very cool. Hello, Ask Systems. Thank you for joining. So as you can see here, we're just going to create a new project. We're going to create a new Blazor project. Oh, I better put the cap on my ice water before it spills. All right, so we're just going to create a Blazor server app. And what I'm going to do is just, we're going to go through some of the components, the parts, what it means, stuff like that. We'll just call this Blazor test. And for this, I'm going to use .NET 7. However, .NET 6 should be identical. Actually, most of the stuff we're covering today isn't very new with Blazor. It's just cool stuff that I like to do. All right, and here is our default scaffolded Blazor server app. We'll go ahead and press F5, or actually I didn't press F5. I pressed the arrow, but you know. And we'll go ahead and run this really quick. First compile is always a little bit slow. And we have our Hello World app. Now, if you've done anything with Blazor, you know this is the first app that comes up. You're probably pretty familiar with it. It has a counter here, has a fetch data, or we fetch fake weather from a weather service. And so let's look at this. This counter is a Blazor component right here. It could also be called a Razor component. That's where it gets a little confusing. Razor is the language that's written in. Let's jump in and just look at the parts of that counter component, and then we'll modify it a little bit. So if we go into here, go to counter.razor, we can see the parts. Now this is an actual page. Because we have this directive right here, this page directive, it says /counter. That means this thing is an entire page. And this page will live within this main layout Razor here. And basically just having that page counter just says that this is its own page. It's self-standing. When you go here, this is what you see. Now here we have current count. And this is a field from our code. So private int current count equals 0. If we change this to 100, it'll start at 100. And so this is the parameter here. And most of this is the HTML section. I'll highlight it here. And this is actually I should say the markup section. It's HTML, but it's HTML with a little bit of a twist. And get that chat window back in here. So it's basically markup. It's HTML with a little bit of twist, and that's what we're talking about here. Is we have some of these little fields here, like current count, and you might notice on click increment count. So that's different from HTML stuff. And what that's doing is it's interacting with this here. So this current count is a private field within the code that's initialized to 0. And then we have a method here, increment count, which we're calling when we click that button. So this area is the code field. This is the markup field. One of the things that I like to do, and actually I didn't do it very much on the Portal app, but it was mostly because I was going back and forth a lot. However, one of the things I like to do is break these out into separating the code and the markup. Instead of having this code here, because sometimes this can get huge. Like it did that with our Portal app. The Portal app just got completely enormous. But like I said, I wanted to just kind of scroll back and forth between the two. But most of the time, best practices, we want to take this out and put it in its own code file. So we'll copy and paste. And what we're going to do is create code behind. If you're familiar with ASP.NET, this is just code behind. That's all we're doing. So we'll go here to counter razor. Let's create a new item. And this item is just going to be a class, just a regular old, plain old class. However, in order to make it code behind, so to make this class interact with counter.razor, we need to name it appropriately. So we'll name it counter.razor.cs. Now, if you look here on my right-hand side, in the Explorer window, you can see that counter.razor.cs is right below counter.razor. So that means instead of this code thing here, which it closed on me, we can delete this. Now we don't need the code at all. And you might notice, oh, this is broken. Well, that's because we need to add it into this class now. And this is a partial class because we already have a counter class. So when you're creating these code behind files, you do need to add that partial keyword there. And that makes this counter class here a part of the main counter class. We'll drop in our code here. Now we have our current count and increment count. And if we go back here, now it's good. So that's one of the first things I like to do with these components. Let's run this really quick just to make sure we're certain that it works. And it does. It works exactly the same. The only reason you're doing this, there's no performance advantage or anything like that. The only reason you're doing this is for you yourself to have a separate markup and a separate code file. That's one of the things that I like to do a lot with this. So what can we do with this current count? For increment count, we have it does this. We could say current count plus 10. We could make this thing increment by 10. Whoops. So now every time we press this, it will add 10 instead of 1. And I'm just kind of demonstrating. See, now we're counting by 10s. Pretty cool, right? So this is, whoops. We need to redo that. Format it. So this is an example of a Razor component that's in a page. Now, what we want to do is, let's see, we'll add another component. That's probably the best way. So now that we've modified this thing, let's just add in something else. Oh, and another thing, we have the page directive here. Since we're using this page directive, we need to put in this page title. This puts that counter title up there. Break this open again. You can see up here it says counter when we're on the counter page. So we're just going to kind of go into the basics. We're not going to go super deep with this today, but just kind of go into the basics of components. We're going to create a new component. and we'll embed it in, and we'll actually embed it into this counter. Because why not? Now, one of these things, another best practice thing, I like to create a folder named components. Now that I think about it, I recently built an app for one of my coworkers. So Lars Klint did a series of talks down in Australia where he had the audience choose which direction the talk was going to go. So it would come up with all these different choices, and you would click it, and it would give people the option to vote. So people in the crowd could vote on each one. And so as a part of this stream, I'll bring that up and I'll show you some of the ways that I used Blazor components in that. We used it with data and everything, and it turned out really cool. So anyway, I create a components folder. I think it's a great place to just store all of your Razor components. And you can even do subfolders within that components folder. And doing another tech check here. Okay. Fair. So I did get a warning. However, we're going to roll with it because I think it's still going. Let me see here. Mute this and check really quick just to make sure. Boy, howdy, there it is. It's working. Okay, perfect. That's all I wanted to know. So let's build a Razor component. In here, right click, add, we'll select Razor component. And we're going to call this rando, because what we're going to do is generate a random number for our component. So this should be pretty cool. So we'll call it rando Razor. This one I'm going to separate into two, but for now, just to check and make sure that it's being loaded, we're going to just put in something like our random number is. And we're going to go back to counter Razor. Put in some HTML here. And then I'm going to put in this component. Now, you can see, actually, let's just let that autocomplete. You can see you can do this, and you can be explicit in the naming. But what I'm going to do is just say using Blazor test components. Now I can use that rando component just like that. So this is how you include a component within a page or another component. So they've changed the way they do pages a little bit. There used to be CSHTML page. And the CSHTML, actually there is still some in here, I believe. Yeah, there's a host CSHTML. What those were was like Razor pages could be embedded into those pages. Now they're kind of making everything Razor page. So this counter.razor is just like counter.cshtml back in the old days of a year ago. So this is how we include the component. Just include rando as the name, and Visual Studio knows that rando goes to rando.razor right here. Click on counter, and there we go. We have rando, our random number is blank. But we need to put a random number in there, right? So we will go here to rando razor, and we could just say private int our rando equals 0. Let's pretend we have a random number generator here. And let's run it. See, 12. So we bound that value, which is cool. It's awesome, right? Let's get rid of this H3. We don't actually need this H3. And let's separate our code out so that we have a little bit of separation there. And in here, we do the exact same thing we did before. We are going to say add a new component. We're going to add a new item. that item is going to be a class rando.razor.cs. And there we go. You can see that this is a code behind. We'll make it partial. And now we don't need this code section here. We can just cut this out. Now this is just pure markup, so we can have that separation of concerns. You know, you can work on your code in one window, this one in the other. Let's run it just to make sure it works. No thank you on the promotion. Random number is 12. All right, let's make it an actual random number though. So one way we could do that, our rando, we'll put, we'll make this an actual property. Get set. I don't know why it's doing that. That's annoying. So let's do prop. Boom. And this is going to be our rando. So this is going to be our random number. And we need to make a way to generate that random number. So what we'll do is we'll do something very similar to counter.razor. We'll take a button. We'll copy that, go into here, and then on click, we'll say generate random number, which this, of course, doesn't exist yet, but it will. Then we'll go back to our code behind. We'll say public void generate random number. Now I'm making this void because what it's going to do is just generate a random number for our rando here. And that's all it does. So we can click that button all day. You can make it asynchronous, whatever. E equals new. Whoops. New is not capitalized. So let's start up a new random number generator. And we will say our rando equals rd next. And with the random number generator, you start with a value and end with another value. So this is basically saying, let's generate a random number from 0 through 10. Now, if everything I've showed you is correct, then we should be able to call generate random number with this button when we click it, and then our rando up here should be automatically updated with a random number 1 through 10. Theoretically. Let's try it out. This is one of the things I love about Blazor is you notice we're not doing any JavaScript here. No offense to JavaScript, but sometimes you don't want to write JavaScript, and there's a lot of JavaScript going on here. Blazor is creating it for us. So we've got these two fields, they're separate. Counter, random number. Awesome, right? Now let's make this look a little more consistent. P roll status, current count, okay. Yeah, I just want to make these look a little more consistent. Looks like I need some more page breaks there to kind of separate it. So we've built our own Razor component. Cool. What do we do now? Well, there's more that we can do with this. I'm going to put another page break in here so that you can see it properly. Okay, cool. So what if we wanted to, let's say, those seed numbers. So we have the seed numbers here. We have 0 through 10. We can change it to 0 through 100, and it'll generate a random number from 0 to 100. Cool. What if we want to change those parameters? As it turns out, it's pretty easy. What we'll do is we'll add some parameters that we can pass into this Blazor component. So I'm going to do prop here, and we're going to say start number. Cool. And of course, end number. And if these aren't populated, they will just be zeros. So we should be able to just safely dump them in here. So now we have a start number and an end number. Now, how do we set these? There's a couple ways we could do it. We could pass it into the method here, but what we're going to do is make it into parameters for the Razor component with a little decorator here. And we'll need to add ASP.NET Core components. So if you've done anything in ASP.NET Core, this is totally familiar to you. Now we have a parameter with a start number and an end number. So when we go to counter Razor, where we're calling rando, now we want to put those parameters in here. So we can say start number is 10, end number is 100. And now we can put these parameters in. We should see a random number from 10 to 100. We have our counter. And it's that easy. It's like super easy. These parameters can be passed in to here, and we could even take this current count, pass it in so that it starts with current count. Whoops, and I put a space in there. So now what are we doing? Well, now we're putting in a start number and an end number, but we're dynamically creating this start number and putting it in here. So our end number, make 100. Hello, Ahmed. I'm doing well. How are you doing today? Thank you for coming to the chat. If you have any questions about anything I'm doing in here, also feel free to jump in the chat and ask questions, because that's what it's all about. We're just kind of learning here. This is just kind of the basics, the very basics of Razor components. Now let's run our application. Okay. Random number from 0 to 100. Now if we click this, say 10 times, it should only start at 10. Let's click this thing a bunch of times. Now it'll start at 30. 11:30 p.m. where you're at. Well, thanks for staying up so late to do that. And so this is just kind of the basics of these Razor components. It's very cool. I want to, in my next stream, I want to dig in even deeper with this. And actually, maybe one of the things we could do is dynamic components. We could add in something from... let's go to the Microsoft documentation. We'll put in, they have a really cool example there. That's why I don't mind robbing it. A really cool example of dynamic components. But here we have, just to kind of go over what we've done so far, we created a new component. We added it into, yeah, lower bound is inclusive, upper is not. Yeah, we can make this thing break pretty quickly. So we took this and we said we added in a component named rando, which lives right here. Components, rando, Razor. Oh, Ahmed's asking what's rando. It's a Razor component that we built here. And it lives in the components area. It looks like this. It's very simple. You just started to learn Blazor 1 day ago? Awesome. That is great. You're going to love it. I love Blazor so much that, and I've actually taken on 2 projects this year, 2 big projects that I'm going to be writing for my fire department. And I'm going to use Blazor. I thought about it, and I've done some applications for them in the past with Golang and SQLite and things like that. And this time I'm going to use Blazor. And what we're going to do is, so we have this stack of pictures at the fire department. Some of them are all the way back to the 1930s. We have these pictures. Some of the older members of the fire department know who are in the pictures, and they know the context of the pictures. We're going to build an application that stores all of those pictures with the names and a description so that we don't forget, because we're getting to this point where there's some old pictures there from the 60s and 70s, and most of the people in those pictures they've passed on, and most of the younger people during that time are also getting older. And so we're going to create this big history project, and I'm going to use Blazor for it because I think it'll be perfect, where we can just log in, upload a picture, put the names on it, and then later, of course, on our website, we're going to create another arm of that displays that for people so that people can see the history of our fire station. We used to have boxing matches in our fire station. Really cool history. That was one of the ways they raised money, is they would have firefighters box each other. Database I'm going to use probably Azure SQL. I think I might use SQLite, but I have not decided yet. If I do use SQLite, I'm going to come up with some good backup stuff that we can back it up and store it. Hello, Orestes. Is this live stream be posted on the channel later for review? Yes, this will be on YouTube. And you can see all of our past streams on YouTube under All Hands on Tech. So you'll be able to use this. Visual Academy asks, do you use code behind for all your Blazor components? I wouldn't say all of them. Just kind of depends on the complexity. Like I said, in my last stream, when I was working on this portal, I intentionally kept them together so that I could go, because I was going back and forth. So I'm doing a lot of scrolling between, like, up here is the markup and down here is the code. And I was just scrolling back and forth for streaming purposes. Most of the time when I'm building something, I do use code behind because I just find it's a little more organized. Like this here, we have, our methods. This just looks like a class because that's all it is a partial class. So it's a little bit easier to go in and say, well, I'm going to change something here and then jump in and change it in the code. So it's just a personal preference. I don't think it really matters that much until your projects start to get enormous. So I lost my train of thought here. So we have our parameters. I was going through, we insert rando. We inserted this into this Razor component as a page. And here, show you something pretty cool. And Ahmed says, am I correct? I didn't see a question. So I'm not really sure what you mean by that, by being correct. Are you correct in starting Blazor a day ago? I would say, in my opinion, yeah. And see, we can duplicate the component. What I did was duplicated it there. And it's 2 separate components. Like they kind of act like separate instances. And that was just copy and paste. So we could go in, like I said, bring up this Microsoft documentation here. Has a really cool example. I have no idea what's going to come up on that page when I load it up, so. Here we go. Microsoft documentation. Dynamically rendered ASP.NET Core Razor components. This is really cool stuff. It has a really cool example too. So you can, you have a component type, specifies what type of component it is, parameters, if you need to pass in parameters, like we did with our other one. So let's just create, and we'll create it right here on our counter page. We'll create this example that they have here. Oh yeah, go ahead and try to type in your question again, Ed, and I'll see if I can hopefully answer it. We have some spam. I guess that's how you know that we've made it as streamers, when we have spam. So block the page, block that person, and now the chat's completely gone. But we at least block that person from, and just a second here, I'm gonna here and make sure that this person is blocked from the chat for posting these links. There we go. Okay. Just had to make sure. Let's see. Okay. We have spam. We must be doing good. Okay. All right. So there we go. What's the question again? So what we're going to do is we're just going to go through and create these Blazor components. And I'll copy and paste here. So the first one is going to be Blazor component. We're going to call this, what is it? Rocket Lab .Blazor. And in Rocket Lab .Blazor, we have this. And we're going to create SpaceX.Blazor. So I'll post this link in the chat that I'm using. We're just using a Microsoft Learn example here. So I'm going to post that in the chat. So your question is, I have feelings that Blazor is so much easier than ASP.NET MVC. The answer to that is kind of, it depends. One of it depends on what you're building. So I was one of those people that was very passionate about MVC for many years. Still am. I still think it's an awesome platform. And what I can really say is that Blazor is not necessarily easier. It's just different. And it's easier for certain projects. Like I mentioned that project that I want to do for the fire department. And if I did that in ASP.NET MVC, I would have to build a front end for it, or do the front end in MVC. And I feel with that much effort, I think I would be writing more JavaScript. I would probably be just doing kind of more overhead work than I really want to do for something that visual. If it's something that's not as visual, I probably wouldn't feel that way. But I don't think the Blazor is easier. I just think it's different. And it's certainly easier for certain things. There's stuff that you can scaffold out, that you can do, like these components, showing how these components go together, which is very similar to how it is in MVC also. But we have all these components you can put together. It just makes it really easy and fast to develop websites. But you need a big project for MVC and a small project. I think Blazor is a great way to do it. Yeah, I mean, for small, actually either of them will work great for small projects. But if I were doing like a much larger, huge enterprise app, I might still choose MVC for it. It kind of depends. And yeah, for small projects, Blazor is excellent because it just kind of scaffolds out some stuff. You can throw your data in and just kind of get roaring. So let's do SpaceX.Blazor. x.razor, and we'll add in space x. And what this is going to do is dynamically load these components based on the ones that we choose. So it's a really cool example that I think we should try. United Launch Alliance.razor. United Launch Alliance.razor. And in here, sin. And then the last one is Virgin Galactic. Add in razor component. Virgin Galactic. And we actually don't need the code stuff in here, but I'm just kind of leaving it in case we want to do something with it later. So now we have these razor files. We have 4 of them, looks like. So let's close, 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 close. We're going to close out our rando because we're not going to do anything with that. We're just going to focus on counter.razor. We're just going to do this in the same folder. Now in here, we have, in this example, it does say to create a razor page. So let's do that really quick. Right now I'm pretty much using C# 10. I created this with .NET 7 and could use C# 11 in it, but right now it's just 10. There really isn't anything super fancy that we have going on yet with it. Add razor component. And we're going to name this exactly how it's named here, which is Dynamic Component Example 1. Not going to type all that in. Dynamic Example 1. And then let's copy the code from there and dump it in. Now we have our page, and we talked about the page directive and what that does. That makes this a page, and it's a dynamic component example. One thing you might notice in here is that these have little red underlines under them because we need to use our components. Now we can see them. So let's go through here. We look at dynamic components, and it has a drop-down menu with a bunch of options here. And on drop-down change, it's going to call, or on change, it's going to call a method named on drop-down change right here. What that does is it changes the selected type. And in selected type, it'll say e value to string, etc. So it's going to take the value here, Rocket Lab, and it's going to get type from, Blazor samples shared. That's going to have to be components. So I guess I did do it a little different. I should have used the exact example, but so our value will be name of Rocket Lab, etc. And we should be able to select these. Whenever we select one of these, it should bring up the appropriate dynamic component type in selected type. Now, if you see the selected type, this is a value like we've done before, where we have a private type here of selected type, and we have a dynamic component. Instead of the component name, it's dynamic component is the name of the component. And then for the type, we'll put selected type. So it should just load in whatever one we select. So let's see how it does. This is dynamic component example 1. Let me just copy that page name because we don't have it in here yet. There we go. Dynamic component example 1. So as you can see, we have these, but I don't see this loading, and it's probably because I didn't follow the tutorial exactly. Let's do that really quick. Blazor sample components. Instead, we'll change this to pages. I believe it was before. Or no, shared. So I will put all of these components that I created here into the shared folder. Scroll down, shared. One more files will be moved. Okay. There we go. You could use a for each to iterate those. We don't need one because we know the exact files that we have here. We know that we have these 4, so we put this 4 in there, but you can do a for each for it if you'd like. Especially if you wanted to do like a listing or something. Oops. Slash dynamic component example 1. Let's see if it works now. It still doesn't work. So let's see if there's something else in here that I forgot to do. So we have shared, Rocket Lab, SpaceX Razor. That is pretty interesting. So I'm not really sure why this hasn't worked. Let me go back up here. Component. Example 1. I'm just making sure I got the right one here. Oh, okay. Namespace. That's where I messed up. Blazor sample is not our main namespace. Our namespace, we can get this here, is Blazor test. So I'm going to say Blazor test.shared. Let's see if it works now. Oh, that's right. We need to load up this dynamic example. Copy. Put here. Now it works. So I just wasn't following the tutorial. So here we have a set of 4 different Razor components, and we're loading them dynamically based on what the person chooses, what your user chooses. To do select a value, it doesn't come up with anything. And these are all dynamic components. Very cool. So I've got about 10 minutes left, so I'll show the application that I was talking about that I built a while back. I think I have the most updated version here. But yeah, just to summarize what we've done today, we've learned about Blazor components. We learned about the markup area of them, and then we learned how to separate that out into code behind. Then we learned how to create our own Blazor component, this rando one, insert it within the counter.razor component. We learned how to pass in parameters to it. And then, thanks to Microsoft Learn's page, we did a dynamic component. We kind of rushed through this one a little bit, but we have dynamic components here. So this is kind of the basics of Razor components. You can really go a long ways from here. And one of the things that I've done, so you have these long bunch of parameters after a while, right? Let's say you're passing 15 different parameters into a Blazor component, which you probably shouldn't do. You should probably reconsider your design at that point. But if you're doing that, you can just pass in a list, which is one of the things that I've done when they've gotten big. And you just pass in a list as a component. So you build the list up here or somewhere else and then drop in that list, or even a dictionary or something like that. And you can pass in tons of component information. Let's open up that project. Choose your own cloud adventure. I believe this is the most updated. We'll find out. I'll run it. Nope, there's build errors. I have no idea what's going on with this. Oh yeah, we're doing that portal. We're still going to go back to that portal. So we did the portal with weather information and METAR reader and stuff like that. We are going to go back to that as soon as I can come up with some good ideas for stuff to add into it. I still do want to add to that project. That was a fun project. This one I think works. So this is the choose your own cloud adventure. So what would happen is Lars would get up and have a talk, and he would give out this URL to everybody. Yeah, that one was a Blazor app also, yeah. So the portal that we made was a Blazor app. This one is also a Blazor app. And so I just kind of wanted to show this. We're going to make this open source, but this uses a SQLite database. And so Lars would go up on the stage, give everyone QR codes they could load up on their phone, and they would load up this on the phone where it'd say, please wait for voting to begin. Then he would start the talk. So let's say Brisbane. He could start a new session. And it says, we're currently at level 1. And they've got 2 choices. So they refresh the app. Here's the 2 choices. So he gives a talk and he says, okay, now I want the crowd, I want the audience to choose one of these things. And so I would say, I want to keep building those walls. Then he goes here and tallies up the votes and says advance to level 2. Based on which one wins, which is keep building those walls, there's yet another choice that comes up. So here's the next choice. And they say, well, I'll choose this one. And so that one ends up being the winner on this one, monitor the armory, and you advance from there. So it's kind of like choose your own adventure books from back in the day. And then they go and say, okay, well, here's the last set of choices. We're going to do an Azure function or a key vault, say keys to the castle. You would see that and then close it out. Now, how I did this mostly is I've got a page here. We'll go to the index page. So here's the index page, and this is what all of the people see who are in the audience. And as you can see, I just did current choice. Is what it's called. Go in here to components, current choice.razor. And this one also has a code behind. And in here, we say, which one will you choose? And that's if our level is not null, which means we've started a session, it's ready to go. And then we'd choose, we'd have the right technology and the left technology. So that's all based on like right and left. It's just kind of a binary tree. And then we have labels here, and these all live inside a SQLite database. Which actually, I'll open that up really quick. So maybe we could do a live stream just on this particular application. So in here, these are the set of choices that will be executed. These are the levels. So each choice is tied to a previous choice. So you got right choice, left choice. And then if you go here, down to some of these, they show the current level that it's at, the previous session, etc. So root for that binary. Physical METAR maps are a thing. Oh, wow. That is cool. I'm going to bring that up right now just because you sent it and it's something that people might be interested in. Let's just bring that up really quick. Make your own METAR weather map. Holy moly. So I see they have a sectional map there. Oh, this looks like a cool project. I might have to do this. It's cool. So I'm assuming this thing automatically reads METAR data and updates it on a physical map. That's really cool. So anyway, this is the component, the main current choice component, which was a lot bigger, but now it's smaller. I made it quite a bit smaller. We disable the buttons after the person makes a choice. And then we have an image source, and we just randomly generate an image for that. And if our level is null, which means there are no levels, then it says, choose your own cloud adventure, wait for voting to begin. Now the code behind in here, as you can see, is huge. So this is one of the reasons I did code behind with this, is because this is 107 lines of code. So this keeps track of our current choice, the current level, the message to be sent to the person, option 1, option 2, all of these, and you can see these are parameters here. And then we pull in our application DB context, which was that SQLite database. And then when this thing loads, it does a random number for that image, no matter what. And it says if context is null, then connect to that DB context, and we're going to make that database connection. Then we call get async, which does all kinds of wild stuff here, and it starts to build up the levels as we're going. We have choose option 1, choose option 2. They're pretty much the same, a little bit different, but when we choose the option, then it goes into the database. It says, what level are we at? I want to vote for this one in this session. Adds the vote, save, change, async. Pretty cool. But yeah, I think I might do a stream just based on this, and we'll just really dissect this code and tear it apart. It's not the world's greatest Blazor code on the planet. However, it is a pretty cool solution, and it worked pretty well. So, but I do need to end this stream, so I hope this has been helpful for people. I hope kind of give you the basics of Blazor components. Ahmed, I hope this helps you start getting more into Blazor, because Blazor is awesome. How long does it take to do what? To like build this application? So I built it in like a weekend, which would be pretty obvious when you look at it. But yeah, it just kind of depends on the complexity of the applications and stuff. I also had COVID brain, so I was a little bit slow on some of this stuff. But yeah, I hope this has helped everyone with our creating Blazor components, using them, putting in parameters, doing dynamic ones. We can do more of it. If people are interested, I can do another one of these. Next week is Christmas, of course, and there's going to be a couple weeks. Probably not a lot of streaming going on, but we'll see. And yeah, I want to do this more every Tuesday. All hands on tech. You can see me here. I do this every Tuesday at the same time. David Neal, my coworker, does a really awesome stream on Thursdays at the same time. So be sure to tune in, and be sure to follow us on Twitch. for sure. Because that is where we always stream. We are always on Twitch. We try to go on YouTube. We try to go on LinkedIn, and most of the time it works, but sometimes it doesn't. So I always say follow people on Twitch. Thank you, everybody, for jumping in to the chat, and thank you, everybody, for watching. And we're going to keep doing this, and we're going to have fun doing it. And yeah, I love hanging out with y'all. Thank you very much, and we will see you soon.